Wake up, Detroit. I'm Joanne Watson, and this is your wake-up call.
When a brown girl child is born, the earth shifts. The sun is at half-mast. The moon waits for her first cry. The ancestors set the table. The flowers turn red as blood. This is your land, continent daughter, with tree trunk legs and branches for arms. This is your soil, black and fertile as your eyes facing an apartheid, Jim Crow, current, past memory. Some of us begin the removal of shackles at birth. We grow into the armor of struggle quickly. We brew courage in our tea, blend bravery into our Sunday dinners. Joanne Watson, you understand nation building is not a part-time job. This dedicated life is sometimes lonely, a vulnerable choice, but it is the only way you know how to operate. You are wired for the movement in your black women bones, even when tired, still fighting, still organizing, still singing morning spirituals. You were born to lead, even in your own family, the eldest of 10 children born to Jefferson and Lestine. You made Damon, Nefertari, Stephen, Maya. Her children always knew she was larger than life. When you are a woman in the movement, you take the children with you on the journey. You bring the babies with you to your college classes. When you travel to Ghana for the first time, it will be with your daughters in tow. When you are a fearless, nationalist thinking mama, mothering never stops with your own babies. 30 godchildren and mentees across the globe. The daughter of a ministering mother is already ordained for good trouble. A seer, a prophetic young student preparing for her lifelong role as servant to her own community. When your purse was snatched in a Farmer Jack parking lot many years ago with your kids' tickets to Run DMC in the purse, you made sure they still got to that concert and even hosted Melly Merrill and the Furious Five in your living room, because queens make it look easy. When you're a single mom, people will tell you what you can't do. Instead, you move to New York City with all 4 of your C's to do your necessary work with the YWCA, because queens make it look easy. Ghana, Togo, South Africa, where is your heart, Mama Watson? Nurturing spirit, baking melt in your mouth, homemade biscuits. How many hours do you sleep, Warrior Watson, with endless work ethic and blue-collar blood racing through your veins? How do we say thank you for your work, your time, your heart? We know you will never really retire. There is a fire on the path to freedom. There is smoke. There is sacrifice. There are stories of justice, of women, of Tubman, Sojourner, of Angela, Asada, Coretta, and Merle, and Betty, and Queen Mother Moore. Some of us know we are ancient, that our marrow is laced with legacy, that we are here to bring light to our daughters. Sometimes it just takes one woman, a mother, a grandmother, a Spitfire, griot, a sister, the only woman to lead the NAACP's largest chapter. She, daughter of the movement, of Rosa, of Irma. She was a birth that gave birth to possibility for other young activists like me, a true D woman, frontline Fatima, Nigerian blood, councilwoman, leader, truth teller, Joanne Watson, social worker, president of the Anti-Klan Network, sister, inspiration, dedicated to the protection of girls and the voices of women wrapped in West African beauty, regal and resilient. Wake up, Detroit. Wake up, South Africa. Wake up, Cuba. Wake up, small business owners. Wake up, White House. Wake up, reparations. Wake up, teachers. Wake up, women. Wake up, schools. Sleeping is not an option when the Honorable Joanne Watson is in the room.
Wake up, Detroit. I'm Joanne Watson. Welcome to the Wake Up Call, WHPR national and local television on this day. And the sponsors are Black Congress on Health, Wealth, Economics, and Education. And our leader, our facilitator, is the great attorney, Derek A. Humphreys. Wow, he's a counselor of Black Congress on Health, Wealth, Economics, and Education. And we have a wonderful panel who's going to lift up the importance of voting. November 3rd is straight ahead. November 3rd is where we're aiming for. That's our target. And we want to make sure there's 100% voter turnout. 100%. Welcome to the Wake Up Call, Attorney Derek A. Humphreys.
And thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mrs. Watson. We're so happy to be here with you. And we say thank you for this now, I believe, the 4th show that you have hosted and invited us back to this station, WHPR TV in Detroit. We are just very happy. Today, We have panelists joining us, Dorothy Jackson, who is the Executive Director and Policy Director for the BCHLEE. We have Dennis Rogers, Dr. Dennis Rogers, who's the National Campaign Director for BCHLEE. We have Frank Fahrenkopf, co-chairman of the Commission on Presidential Debates. We have Gregory Humphreys, who is the campaign strategist. Yes.
All right, Gregory.
We have Reverend Kenneth C. Pierce, second senior pastor at Hopewell Missionary Baptist Church.
Come on,
and
somebody.
we also have the Honorable Nancy Quarles, Dr. Nancy Quarles, former Michigan State Representative, and now currently the Oakland County Commissioner in the state of Michigan. So that's our lineup today. It promises to be electric and informative.
Wonderful.
And I now turn it back to you.
And thank you. We want to thank you for sponsoring all of these sessions of Wake Up Detroit, Wake Up America, Wake Up World, because we want everybody to wake up and participate in the November 3rd election. This is not a time for anyone to opt out. It's a time to opt in. It's a time to be included, to make a difference. And we're so grateful to the Black Congress on Health, Law, Economics, and Education, Attorney Derek A. Humphreys. We want to first ask Pastor Kenneth Pierce, who is chair of the Religious Affairs Committee of the Detroit NAACP, to talk about, he's a millennial pastor and one who has been engaged on the front line of helping to wake people up from a perspective that is spiritual, but is also solidly rooted in justice. Thank you very much for being a special guest, Pastor Pierce.
Thank you, Mama Watson.
What is it that you urge people on this day, people of faith, people who are believers, people to do as it relates to November 3rd?
Vote. I believe we as a community of faith believers, we preach about a Jesus that I don't believe we understand was also socially inclined. He was also for the people who needed to be represented. I think it's important that if we talk about our faith and we talk about what we believe, one thing we have to do is also believe the scripture when it says faith without works is dead.
That's right.
So we can talk all day about voting and registering to vote, but I want to say even to my generation, as it relates to mixing faith and the generational talk of millennials, is that we just can't just be about talk. We can't just say that we won't change and then we don't do things to help make that change. And the one thing we do have is we have a voice.
That's right.
And the one way we use our voice is by voting.
That's right.
And then being educated. I hope there's some millennial that's listening, being educated as it relates to who we're voting for, what we're voting for, why we're voting, and the importance of voting. So my prayer is, and my plea is that everyone's registered and that we're taking our feet to the polls and exercising the right that Jesus has allowed us to have.
Come on, somebody. Trying to make me shout this morning. We want to Frank J. Fahrenkopf, co-chair of the Commission on Presidential Debates, to give us a wake-up call about the importance of having active participation in a debate process to help to lift up the electoral franchise. Thank you for being a special guest on Wake Up Detroit.
Pleasure to be here.
Now, what is it that keeps you propelled and engaged as you are engaged in the process of putting together debates?
Well, that's a very good question. And I think Dorothy has heard me talk about this years ago when we worked together, is the Commission on Presidential Debates, which is a private nonprofit. It sounds very official, but we have nothing to do with the government, nothing to do with either political party or any of the campaigns and candidates. We're private, raise our money private. It was created back in 1987 when I was chairman of the Republican National Committee under Ronald Reagan. And the then head of the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, was Paul Kirk of the state of Massachusetts. And we went together and created the Commission on Presidential Debates. We only do the general election debates. We have nothing to do with the primary debates. And with the final debate in 2016, which was in Las Vegas, that was the 30th debate that we have done since we were created.
Wow.
And when we created the commission, Chairman Kirk and I, who are very, very close friends, shook hands and said that whenever we did anything having to do with the Commission on Presidential Debates, he would never wear a DNC hat. I would never wear an RNC hat. We would always wear USA hats.
Go ahead.
And I think because we're still around after 30 some years,
That's right.
I think we fulfilled that mission.
That's exactly right. And it's important that we see this country as one America, right?
No question.
And you certainly are showcasing that with a nonpartisan presidential commission. So how wonderful of you would have to have been involved since the beginning. And now here we are coming up on 2020 presidential debate.
Right. It'll be, as you know, next Tuesday, September 29th, will be the first presidential debate between Vice President Biden and President Trump. It'll take place in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yes.
It's jointly sponsored by Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic. Chris Wallace of Fox News will be the moderator of the first debate. And what we do now is we change the format. The debates are 90 minutes long, no advertisement, no interruption. The 90 minutes is divided into 6 15-minute segments. And the moderator notifies the candidates and the world a week before what the subject matter of each of the 6 sections would be. And Chris Wallace did this the day before yesterday. And the 6 that he is going to question the 2 candidates on are, in no specific order, of course, Trump's record and Biden's record, of course, the economy, COVID-19, the Supreme Court, race and violence in cities, and integrity of the election. So those are the 6 areas. And moderators will have the ability to drill down and make these people really state where they stand on these issues and not just give a 2-minute answer that they use in answering some reporter's questions. So the second debate will be a week later. That'll be the vice presidential debate. It'll be Wednesday, October 7th at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City, Utah. The moderator will be Susan Page, who's the Washington Bureau Chief of USA Today. The town hall meeting, which is where citizens of where we go ask the questions, not the moderators, will be held in Miami on October 15th. And Steve Scully, who does C-SPAN. If you ever watch C-SPAN, you know who Steve Scully is. He'll be the moderator. And the final debate will take place in Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee on October 22nd. And the moderator will be Kristen Welker, who is the co-anchor of the Weekend Today and the White House correspondent for NBC News.
Well, I thank you for that backdrop illustrating what's ahead. And we know the first debate is coming up. And how wonderful to get that layout and illustration from someone who's been principally involved in putting it together. We're so grateful that you're here today. And certainly we encourage all of our viewers and listeners to tune in and to become a part of this process that will help people in fashioning their vote on November 3rd. Thank you very much.
We estimate, and all the people who know about this, that first debate will be watched by in excess of 120 million viewers.
My. That's
so it's very important.
That's significant. Attorney Dorothy Jackson, we want to thank you for bringing this special guest onto our panel today. And we know you are well connected, not only with the Divine Nine, but all over the landscape of our nation. And you always give a good motivation for getting the vote out.
Thank you, Reverend Watson. It was my pleasure to bring Frank Fahrenkopf on because, as he said, he's been working on this for over 30 years, and there's nobody who knows more about the Commission on Presidential Debates than Frank Fahrenkopf because his original partner, Paul Kirk, passed away. So
no, actually, Dorothy, the reason that Paul is no longer the co-chairman, and you probably forgot this, when Ted Kennedy passed away, the governor of Massachusetts appointed Paul Kirk to take Teddy's seat in the Senate for
That's
6
right.
months until a special election. And he served that out. He couldn't be on the senator and also be on the commission. So he stepped down, but he's still alive. He lives on Cape Cod.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Frank. I confused
All right.
him with another one of your friends of a long time who passed away. But as you can see, Frank is very knowledgeable with the history, everything that goes on. But Frank, if you have time, because I know you have another engagement, could you just tell us the part that each campaign plays in negotiating the sites and all the background that goes on behind planning for these debates?
I'll be happy to. They have no input. They used to, when we started this back in 1988, we would sit down with them, and finally we said, we're not going to listen to both sides telling us what to do and how to do it. So the commission now, without any consultation with the parties or the candidates, we pick the dates, we pick the locations, we pick the moderators, we pick the format without any consulting or word coming in from the candidate. Now, they always try to lobby us a little bit, but we do it on ourselves. The commission does it. But there used to be what you're talking about, Dorothy, was the debate over the debate.
Right.
That existed way back in the late 80s and early 90s. But since about 2000, we've eliminated their input at all. And the commission itself, which is nonpartisan, we have Republicans on it, people who were active, we have Democrats on it, and independents. And we act as an independent body.
Frank,
I have one follow-up, Frank. Excuse me, Derek.
Yes.
How does the commission go about selecting the moderators for the debates? Because there are many, many media people who I'm sure would just love the opportunity to moderate a presidential debate. So how do you go about selecting who moderates the debates?
That's the hardest thing that we have to do. We want to make sure we have diversity. And that's hard when you look at the networks. The networks are not very good, television networks, of great diversity among their lead people who you see on television. Like, for example, African Americans. I mean, Gwen Ifill, when she was alive, did 2 or 3 for us. Lester Page did it 4 years ago. And this time we sat down and we said, all right, we analyzed, we watched people, what they're saying on television, or if they're print journalists, what they're writing. You can't get someone who's so totally prejudiced one way or the other. So we sit down, we observe their body of work. We're not choosing networks or papers, we're choosing the individual journalists. So Chris Wallace did the last debate 4 years ago. And everyone, Republicans and Democrats, even the 2 candidates, said he was marvelous, did a great job. So we thought he earned a repeat here. Susan Page, this is the first time in 20 years, actually 20 years, that we've had a print reporter, someone who writes for a newspaper, as I said, USA Today. And the reason we didn't do that for years is the moderator has a microphone in his or her ear, and they're being talked to off stage by producers and so forth. And you have to be somebody who's used to working with that in your ear. And nowadays, a lot of the print reporters, you'll see them as guests on some of the TV shows, and particularly on the weekend political shows. And Susan has been on for a long time. So she's breaking ground here from the standpoint of being a print reporter. Steve Scully at C-SPAN was our backup in 2016. If anything had happened to any of those moderators, Steve would have had to fill in. So he had to prepare every time for 4 debates. So we thought he kind of earned it. And then we really explored very, very carefully Asian, African American, and Hispanic. And so our choice was a rave review by just about everybody. Kristen Welker, she's African American, the co-anchor on Weekday Today, and she's the White House correspondent for NBC News. And now we're being criticized by the Hispanics because we didn't choose Hispanic. Well, it's very hard to do this thing and do it in a fair way. And so we're pleased. We think we've done it as best we can, and that these moderators will do a good job. But it's very difficult. You only have 4 spots. Our view is you have to have 2 women, and you have to have someone of color. So it's hard to find out what you're going to do. We do the best we can.
I propose that as you consider the next time, perhaps even this cycle, that you also consider Joanne Watson
Well, I was going to say, Reverend Watson would be, I'll tell you what, she'd light it up.
Thank you.
Frank, now,
Appreciate that.
if you could share with us, Frank, how does one get appointed to the commission?
Well, what we do is every 4 years, those are cycles. And so what we'll do, for example, at the end of this debate cycle, we'll meet. And let me tell you, give you a little background on people who are on and who have been on the commission. And it changes. Some people die, some people leave for other reasons. For example, hang on one second here. There we go. Caroline Kennedy was on the commission from the time that it was created. However, when she was appointed by President Obama to be the ambassador to Japan, she had to step down. Pat Swigert, I hope some of you know Pat. He was the former president of Howard University. He was on the commission for years. Bob Schieffer, who was CBS, was on the commission until he got called back to CBS, and so we lost him. Mitch Daniels, who's now the president of Purdue University, was the former governor of Indiana. Well, when the coronavirus hit, they had enough to do on university campuses. So what we do is we normally have at that time people who say, all right, I've done it, I want to move on, and the commission gets together and we try to fill it with people, fill the vacancies with people who we think are going to wear that USA hat and not a political hat.
And let me recommend Derek A. Humphreys would be a great person on that commission, because as he leads the Black Congress on Health Law, Economics, and Education, a nonpartisan group, and he's been doing that for a number of years successfully. He is firmly rooted in connecting with organizations who have large millions of constituencies.
Reverend Watson, I already wrote his name down.
All right.
And also, he's got a great voice.
Yes, he does. I appreciate that. I'm going to ask the great Dr. Dennis Rogers to talk to us now about the importance of us seizing the time, because there's some social justice activity going on all over the country this day because of a ruling yesterday. So what can we do to make many of those who are demonstrating and marching, who are not pleased about what is perceived as injustice, are not necessarily marching to the polls? So what can we do to harness that energy, Dr.
Can I
Rogers?
interrupt you, Reverend? I've got another Zoom interview coming up. If anyone has any more questions, I'll be happy to take them. But I'm going to have to get ready for the other one. It's the newspaper in London, so I've got a time problem.
We understand. We thank you for being with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I hope you'll have me back sometime.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye, Dorothy. Bye-bye, everybody.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Honorable Joanne Watson, for having this forum and allowing the Black Congress on Health Law and Economics to communicate with the listening audience and those who view us in social media. As you know, our 2020 campaign is entitled Moving from Protest to Power at the Polls. And in lieu of the decision that was made yesterday in Louisville, Kentucky, that was not in favor of bringing Breonna Taylor's assassinators to justice, we saw an explosion last night across the country of protest. And so we're still very much in a fluid situation where there are protests that we saw during the summer with George Floyd's untimely assassination, and we're watching these protests take place in the streets. And one of the concepts that has come to the fore is this notion that while the marchers are marching in the streets for justice, and we just heard the commissioner say that the fifth point that they will be discussing in the debate will be on race and justice in America, that those who are marching in the streets tune in to their other tools in their toolbox. Protest is a political tool, and they are exercising it. In New York, they're riding bicycles in the street. In Washington, D.C., they're walking in the street. They're using umbrellas to, just kind of shield themselves from the police actually pointing guns at protesters. So our nation at this point is lightly in a state of turmoil.
Yes.
And our the resident of 1,600 Pennsylvania Avenue is not doing anything to smooth that turmoil. Cooler heads must prevail. And so ideally, as we hear from Ben Crump, for example, Attorney Ben Crump, in addition to the details of these cases, we'll begin to hear the notion that the protesters vote in order to convert this energy from protest to power at the polls.
Well said, Dr. Rogers. And Greg Humphreys, who is the one who is engaged with watching and helping to transform people into those observing the political process into participants in the political process. What can you say to urge persons to be a part of the solution, be a part of the absolute democratic process that will take place on November 3rd?
Well, first I want to say thank you, Honorable Joanne Watson, for giving me this opportunity and distinguished guest. I'm very honored to be a part of this panel. Let me give you a little background about myself. I'm managing partner for Humphreys Group, LLC, a campaign consulting firm in Detroit. And just the last, then I'll make this real brief. We've just ran campaigns during this pandemic. And it was pretty unique because when we started out, I had two candidates who were running, which were both very successful. We managed to garner or at least touch about 50 to 70,000 people during this pandemic in unconventional ways. So with that being said, we had to, and I think across the country, we have to rethink how we touch people, how we get them to come out to vote. And there's one thing that I always tell my candidates is that you give before you ask. And I think that engages people in the process because it's always been known that politicians show up at your door asking, but they never take the opportunity to do their research to say, what can I give first? And you don't want to people get discouraged when you come and you say, I need to vote. But to them, it's more than just the vote. To the candidates, it's the vote because it gets them in office. But you have to look beyond that and you have to go inside and meet people where they are. So with that being said, and I also have another philosophy that I think it can resonate across the country, is that I don't care how much you know until I know how much you care. So we walk in and we talk to people and we ask them about their lifestyle. And I think that's one of the things that we're missing here, is that we don't have that love like Honorable Irma Henderson used to have. When you walked away from her, you felt as though that you mattered. And I really loved growing up in that area there with those candidates or elected officials such as yourself, Honorable Joanne Watson. You cared about people. And I think that's one of the aspects that we're missing that I infuse in my campaigns with my candidates.
Well,
once we bridge that gap with if everybody comes under the umbrella of we care about you, we care about your next step. A lot of people, they only understand what they're going through at that particular time. So we have to tap into that. The religious community have to tap into that. Our elected officials that are there have to, once they get in, tap into that. Our unions, all our organizations have to come under the umbrella of we care about you.
That's right. That's right.
We love we love you. And I think we're taking that personal part out of it. And I've been successful in my campaigns because I put it back in there. I don't have you don't have people walk in and automatically talk about. And Ms. Watson, you do that. You've done that. And I've learned from you. You walk in and you engage them in their life because you don't know where they're coming from. You don't walk in and immediately tell them, hey, I can do this for you, do this for you. Have to engage people. And I think that's what we're missing.
Well said. Let me give a very special call out for our sponsor as we're at the bottom of the hour. This program is sponsored by the Black Congress on Health Law, Economics, and Education, led by the great attorney from Detroit, Derek A. Humphreys, who has been DC-based for many decades now. And we're so blessed to have a panel, a wonderful, distinguished panel today, lifting up the importance of voting on November 3rd. This is one in a series. And it's important for us to really not see voting as something other people do, but voting as something I must do. People must own the responsibility. Pastor Pierce, I know you're preaching that on Sundays and also talking about that in your role as a community leader in this community and in the metropolitan area.
Yes, ma'am. Nonstop. And I'll circle back. I don't think I can say it enough that Jesus was a person that represented the injustice of our people. One of the reasons he died on the cross was for the injustice of people that were that such as us. You know what I mean? And so this whole voting process is extremely important. And I've heard it all my life, every year. That this year the vote is important. This year the election is important. But I truly believe that this is the most important election that I know for a fact that I have ever been a part of.
Well said. Attorney Derek Humphreys, now you have led the Black Congress on Health Law, Economics, and Education to stand up for participation in the electoral process for many seasons now. What is it that propels you to have this kind of exemplary leadership during our election season?
I think it's a love for our people, bottom line. It's seeing the ambition and the dreams that we have. As you know, I'm from a family of 13 children.
My.
And our mother and father were involved with just on the ground efforts to get people out to vote. And of course, working in your campaign,
well,
elevated, their participation. But what comes to mind then, as we look at across the years, this is the first time that a general election will be held under the pandemic conditions. And I'd like to ask of Gregory and Pastor Pierce, what challenges do they see with regard to the upcoming election, getting people out to vote, in light of the fact that we have a pandemic and we have social distancing? We also have a breakdown in communication. We have the whole idea that we can't be in touch with each other, and we are a people who talk to each other.
That's right.
We want to know how you're doing, how's your cousin doing, how's your brother who I went to high school doing, etc. And so I wonder, what are the types of challenges we are facing now, and what should we plan for? And so I can ask Greg or Pastor Pierce your thoughts about that. What are our challenges? Greg Humphrey.
You're asking me. Oh, okay. I thought I was going to say something. Some of the challenges that like you mentioned, what we have faced is reaching people. And I think that communication is very important. Communication. We have to get, like I said before, we have to meet people where they are. And given under these circumstances, it's difficult, but you have to be unconventional. We have to have polling sites that are spread out throughout the city, secure polling sites, secured 1 police stations maybe medical centers where we have people coming and going so these boxes don't disappear. And then one of the other issues is that, remember, we used to put people in our cars and take them to the polls. We used to have vans, buses. The NAACP used to gather people and take them. Because of social distancing, we can't do that anymore. So we have to, what I call AV chase. So we're going to have to get on the phones and talk to people. We have to go to people's homes, keeping safe distance, and we've done that over the summer, where we approach them, ring the doorbell, then we step back and we talk to them beyond the six feet. So some of the things that we as people to get out, organizations to get out the vote, we have to kind of rethink how we do that. And like I said, those are a couple of obstacles that we have, but we can get around those because I've just done it. It's just you have to think outside the box now. We're no longer in a box. We have to think outside the box to get people to want to engage in the voting process and send them that message. The one, because we're an emotional people, we have to make an emotional appeal to them on the importance of getting out to vote.
Well said. And of course, this is a non-traditional backdrop. This program itself normally would be coming out of the TV studio of WHPR, but we're operating on Zoom because of the pandemic. So we understand about changing and transforming your way of doing. The modus operandi often has to move when the circumstances have changed. Pastor Pierce, the way you worship has changed.
Yes, the way worship has changed. It's funny, Dr. Watson, before the pandemic, we were speaking of going into multiple services, and then the pandemic hit. And so now we are all virtual with only our ministerial staff and media team in the sanctuary, which has been a great platform, honestly. I honestly believe some of this has something to do with God. He had his hand in it, because now it allows us as leaders to reach even more people than we were able to reach before. We have the attention of even more ears, more viewers, and different demographics. Not just in Michigan or Detroit now. Now we as leaders are able to use our power of influence and our voice to reach the masses. And so a lot of times, I take advantage of that moment and I talk about the importance of voting. I talk about what's going on in our society. Sunday, I plan to give a little insight on my personal feelings about what we just seen on yesterday. To use that platform and that voice to push our people to think in a different direction and now see why it is important that on November 3rd, we make a difference.
That's right. Well said.
Yes, and Pastor Pierce, when you speak with your congregation, please let them know that you were part of a national broadcast.
Yes, sir.
I'm in Washington, D.C.
Yes, sir.
Dorothy Jackson is in Washington, D.C. Dennis Rogers is in North Carolina, okay? And then, of course, Greg and Dr. Watson and you are in Detroit. And
yes,
that is what we get through the association with Dr. Watson and Wake Up Detroit, that the resources are gained from across the country so that we can talk through the auspices of Dr. Watson to a national audience.
And actually, you're also being seen in the Virgin Islands.
Amen.
And across the United States, across the world via Facebook. So that this is a wonderful opportunity for us to unite voices and votes.
That's right.
And the principle of putting our votes together collectively on November 3rd. Nobody should opt out on November 3rd. There's no room for people who are saying their vote doesn't matter. It absolutely does matter.
And what is the plan when we hear often now, more recently, as different people say to the potential voter, have a plan, have a plan. And the question has come up, what do they mean by have a plan? And so I ask you who are on the ground, in particular, in a critical state, what is the plan? And are there varieties of the plan? And what's the plan for a senior citizen? What's the plan for young people? What's the plan for volunteers? And if you could share what you see and you know has worked, and as well as the creativity that you employ as you approach November 3rd. Pastor?
Now, this is the question of what is the plan? I believe one of the plans, and Mama Watson, she's heard me say this many times, one of the plans I believe, and speaking from a millennial, is educating. I think one of the issues my generation has, and this is in talking to them, is they're not educated on why and what we should be voting for. They're just told, go vote. You get what I'm saying? And I think some of the time that messes us up because we push them to vote. They go do exactly what we said, but they have no clue what they're voting for, what the policies are, what's on the ballot, who they're voting for. And so I think, as it relates to me, if I can speak for me, one thing I've been doing with our community and also my church is making sure they're educated on why we're doing what we're doing.
They also need to be educated on when the timeline is for those who want to vote by absentee ballot. For example, in Michigan, it starts today. You can vote today with an absentee ballot. So the balloting process is not something that starts November 3rd. It's for many areas of the country, it has already begun. And in Michigan, it begins today. You have the opportunity to cast an absentee ballot that can be counted on today.
Can I interject with that?
Yes.
As a matter of fact, Honorable Joanne Watson, they mailed them out on the 19th.
That's
the
right.
city was allowed to push them back. So people are voting now. They have been voting since the 19th.
Right now.
Yep.
And they can drop their ballots in those set-aside units very close to the clerk's office and around various areas of the city. And everyone can do that, and it will not require them to risk social distance issues by voting at the poll. You have an opportunity to vote right now.
Exactly. Well, to follow up what Pastor said, once you educate them, we have to follow that up. We have to pound it home, because we'll tell them, and then if they don't have the constant message after that, then it's going to fall by the wayside.
That's right.
So we have to do that. And one thing that we used to have is the religious community get together, and they used to put out a slate. And this time I didn't see that. I didn't see that in the primary. And I was hoping that in the general, in the urban areas, because the religious community is so strong, because they cannot touch people in their sanctuaries anymore, then maybe they can come together as a unit and put out a piece on the importance of voting.
I saw some slates out in Detroit.
The religious slates, I haven't seen those.
Yeah,
Good.
I saw some slates. It's more challenging now because of the pandemic.
Okay.
Many people use social media platforms to clear their. So I saw most of them on social media platforms, not because they were mailed out or handed out at polling places.
And that's what I was hoping, that they can get mailed out, because the seniors, don't do the social media as much as we would,
That's true.
Like.
Well
So
said.
I was hoping that maybe, I know it's a financial thing, but I was hoping maybe a piece can be mailed to the seniors, if nobody else, because they're sitting home and they will read that. My mom, she sits at home. She gets a piece of mail. She will read it. She won't go on the social media to look it up. So what had happened is we're separating people those who are in the know and the knowledge, and those who aren't, who are seeking information that needs to come to their door. So maybe that's an option, but that's group of people.
Well, that's a good point. The plan to vote and that plan for voting ought to include intergenerational strategies.
Correct.
So you're not just appealing to one era, but to multiple generations, because we want every generation to vote.
Correct.
Dennis Rogers, I thought I saw you trying to engage.
Well, I was thinking of the notion that we have, as we know, people who are registered to vote, and then we have those that turn out to vote. And in the last cycle, it was a record number of voters, but in the African American community, there were more of our registered voters who turned out in the 2008 presidential election, of course, with President Obama. And so the notion of educating using technology, and we're seeing at one point there used to be door hangers posted on people's doors, and we may see that in the next 30 days as we get closer and closer to the election, but that we need both a high-tech strategy and a high-touch strategy. Because
That's right.
As Attorney Humphreys stated earlier, we are, in fact, a people that ask, how are you doing? How are your people doing? How's your mother and your father and your son and your daughters? And during this COVID season, as we know, some of the people we know very personally, we're tuning in even more so to how people are doing in their health, as we are the Black Congress on Health Law, Economics, and Education. So I would just encourage all of the listeners of this show to do as I've heard Attorney Jackson say. We know people in battleground states that we need to communicate with. We have family members there. We need to call them. We need to say, get engaged and do things like in Atlanta, Georgia, there's a private-owned Black club called The Gathering Spot. And the owner of The Gathering Spot went on social media because trickery was being done, and they were saying that a particular candidate would come to The Gathering Spot for an event. And he went on social media to correct that, to say as a millennial, that's not what's taking place. If you know anything about the ideology behind our business, we're not endorsing that particular candidate. So I encourage business owners as well as millennials and all the tools that they have at their disposal, including social media, to have a high-tech and a high-touch strategy to be a part of the plan.
Excellent, excellent. Well said, Dr. Rogers.
And I might ask Dorothy Jackson, who is a native of the state of New York, in particular the city of New York, if she would share with us what you are hearing from New York in terms of addressing this particular issue of getting people.
If I can interject for 1 second, Mama Watson, I just want to thank you as I do have to leave to get the kids ready. But I want to thank you, and it was a pleasure being on this call with all of you all.
Bless you, darling.
Thank you.
Pastor Pierce.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
To answer your question, Derek, New York is a hotbed of COVID activities. And as we know, the pandemic is going to cause, and I think Dr. Rogers spoke about it also, as well as Pastor Pierce, and also Gregory Humphreys, we're going to have to revise and retool those of us who are campaign strategists who really work hard to get out the vote, how we do it in this social distancing within the pandemic. Now, in New York, or I got my training in Brooklyn, New York from the Coalition on Community Empowerment. And you work on a campaign until the polls are closed. You don't read polls and say, oh, well, my candidate is 14 points up, so we can take it easy. And I think that people cannot be lulled into taking it easy, or because some poll says one candidate is above the other. You just have to work the old-fashioned way. And like Greg Humphreys was saying, we have to still, and Dennis mentioned it too, Dr. Rogers, we have to still find a way to get those palm cards out that have a slate. We have to find a way to get those knockers on the door or to get information in people's hands. And one thing that makes me proud to be part of the Black Congress on Health Law, Economics, and Education, and this series of programs that we're doing to register, educate, and motivate people to vote is because with all the things I see on social media, we are the only organizations who are doing this, who are paying really strict attention to the education part of our message. You can register people and leave them hanging out there. The way I was trained, you register people and you go back. And this is where Dennis's high touch comes in. And you make sure, we don't just want you registered to say, I registered 2,000 people. We wanted you to use that registration, turn it into your power, and bring that power to the polls and vote. And vote from the top of the ticket to the bottom. Because in these situations where you have overzealous police, overzealous prosecutors, and things like going into Kentucky, there are some people who don't vote. They don't vote for the clerk of the courts when it's on the ballot. They don't vote for district attorneys. You can't stop at the top. And that's part of what we are educating people here to do, and also in New York and other places where it's the community organizations, like the Coalitions for Community Empowerment, Gregory's organization. It's left to us to pull out our people and make them see that the only way that we have some power to change our circumstances is at the polls.
That's right. That's right. Well said, Attorney Dorothy Jackson. Attorney Derek A. Humphreys, a leader of the Black Congress on Health Law, Economics, and Education. I'd love to have you close us out as we not only close out this segment, but really start this week of organizing, strategizing to do what we must do for November 3rd.
Well, thank you, Dr. Watson. And as you know, and the panelists know, our theme is moving from protests to power at the polls. And it is communicating that message to all of those who are in different communities who can get the vote out. Now, the issue, there are many issues and many obstacles to that, and there's some unique ones this time. It's still, it is the credibility and integrity of the message of moving from protests to power at the polls.
Hey, excuse me, Derek, we have the Honorable Nancy Quarles, who's been signed on for the whole program, so I'm not sure what the glitch is or why. I'm not sure if she's been let in the program.
I didn't see her.
Oh, my.
Oh, I'm just not seeing.
There she is.
The Honorable Nancy Quarles. The Honorable Nancy Quarles, a great leader in Michigan, and well respected throughout the state and throughout the nation. What an honor it is to have you on. Wake up, Detroit. Give us a good get out the vote motivational message, Nancy Quarles.
Unmute.
Unmute yourself, darling.
I'm so excited. This is important. We're looking at the future.
Hey.
If we don't go out and do the right thing in November 3rd, we don't know what we'll be facing November 5th.
Wow. And November 3rd is a time when all of us can come together at the polls. You know that from your leadership with the electoral process. You know that as a candidate, as someone who has won elections, as someone who's been in charge of elections, Nancy Quarles. And do you have any special strategies you have used to make sure that people get to the polls?
The biggest strategy, and that I've used, that you have to stay in contact We can't just go out and knock on a door, and unfortunately we can't do that now. But you're going to have to constantly call. You're going to have to constantly have signage out. We're going to have to remind people. As this has always been surprising to me, people I know who are well-read, people I know who follow issues, and they forget to go vote on election day.
How could you forget?
It is amazing how they actually forget. And then you have those who say that their vote don't count. And if they don't think their vote don't count, look at what we have succumbed and had to go through for the last 3 years.
My. Well said. The Honorable Nancy Quarles, a great leader, one who has made a great difference in the state of Southeast Michigan. And what an honor it is and a privilege to have you as a special guest on Wake Up Detroit. Wake up, world. We've got Nancy Quarles on, y'all.
With my good friend.
Oh, and we say thank you very much on behalf of BCHLEEE for joining us, and indeed to make up for the our failure to include you earlier. We're going to invite you to come back.
That's right.
Oh, wonderful.
That's
wonderful.
right. Okay. So we're so grateful that you have joined us, and we're grateful to every one of the panelists today. Thank you, Dr. Dennis Rogers. Thank you, Greg Humphreys. Thank you, Attorney Dorothy Jackson. Thank you, the Honorable Nancy Quarles. Thank you to the other guests who had to move on to other assignments. And we're so grateful to have our leader, Attorney Derek A. Humphreys, providing great sponsorship and being our facilitator from the Black Congress on health law, economics, and education. Thank you, one and all. And wake up, Detroit. Wake up, world.
Wake up, Detroit. Wake up, world. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Watson.
Thank you.
Vote for Breonna Taylor. Vote for all of those who lost their lives.
When a brown girl child is born, the earth shifts. The sun is at half mast. The moon waits for her first cry. The ancestors set the table. The flowers turn red as blood. This is your land, continent daughter, with tree trunk legs and branches for arms. This is your soil, black and fertile as your eyes facing an apartheid Jim Crow current past memory. Some of us begin the removal of shackles at birth. We grow into the armor of struggle quickly. We brew courage and our tea, blend bravery into our Sunday dinners. Joanne Watson, you understand nation building is not a part-time job. This dedicated life is sometimes lonely, a vulnerable choice, but it is the only way you know how to operate. You are wired for the movement in your black women bones, even when tired, still fighting, still organizing, still singing morning spirituals. You are born to lead, even in your own family, the eldest of 10 children born to Jefferson and Lestine. You made Damon, Nefertari, Stephen, Maya. Her children always knew she was larger than life. When you are a woman in the movement, you take the children with you on the journey. You bring the babies with you to your college classes. When you travel to Ghana for the first time, it will be with your daughters in tow. When you are a fearless, nationalist thinking mama, mothering never stops with your own babies. 30 godchildren and mentees across the globe. The daughter of a ministering mother is already ordained for good trouble. A seer, a prophetic young student preparing for her lifelong role as servant to her own community. When your purse was snatched in a Farmer Jack parking lot many years ago with your kids' tickets to Run DMC in the purse, you made sure they still got to that concert and even hosted Melly Merrill and the Furious Five in your living room, because queens make it look easy. When you were a single mom, people would tell you what you can't do. Instead, you moved to New York City with all 4 of your C's to do your necessary work with the YWCA, because queens make it look easy. Ghana, Togo, South Africa, where is your heart, Mama Watson? Nurturing spirit, baking melt in your mouth, homemade biscuits. How many hours do you sleep, Warrior Watson, with endless work ethic and blue-collar blood racing through your veins? How do we say thank you for your work, your time, your heart? We know you will never really retire. There is a fire on the path to freedom. There is smoke, there is sacrifice, there are stories of justice, of women, of Tubman, Sojourner, of Angela, Asada, Coretta, and Merle, and Betty, and Queen Mother Moore. Some of us know we are ancient, that our marrow is laced with legacy, that we are here to bring light to our daughters. Sometimes it just takes one woman, a mother, a grandmother, a Spitfire, griot, a sister, the only woman to lead the NAACP's largest chapter. She, daughter of the movement, of Rosa, of Irma, she was a birth that gave birth to possibility for other young activists like me, a true D woman, frontline Fatima, Nigerian blood, councilwoman, leader, truth teller, Joanne Watson, social worker, president of the Anti-Klan Network, sister, inspiration, dedicated to the protection of girls and the voices of women wrapped in West African beauty, regal and resilient. Wake up, Detroit. Wake up, South Africa. Wake up, Cuba. Wake up, small business owners. Wake up, White House. Wake up, reparations. Wake up, teachers. Wake up, women. Wake up, schools. Sleeping is not an option when the Honorable Joanne Watson is in the room.